intentional, and it can, you hate to say check off or kill as many birds with one stone as you can, but that is a part of the talent of becoming a strong and effective teacher, is being able to be very intentional and accomplishing as many goals as you can. So to take a step backwards in talking about AMLE, which used to be the National Association or National Middle School Association, a few years ago in Columbus City Schools, Columbus Dispatch put it out there that our middle schools were failing the students in Columbus City Schools. So they did a survey, they surveyed the teachers, the results were nothing that didn't surprise us, that teachers didn't have enough time to work with students, they didn't have time to provide intervention, and that something needed to be done. And so what came out was the middle school redesign was the official title of it. And so within that, it brought back some things that groups of teachers share students. So in all middle schools that you see in Columbus City Schools, students travel and they share the same teachers, where the year before that, the bell rang. I may have had some students, and then when the bell rang again, those kids may have gone to different English teachers. So if we needed to call a parent, we couldn't just pull aside and say, oh, we're going to call Johnny's mom today. I had to track down and try to figure out the schedule of who was going where at what time. So now all of the students share the same group of teachers, and that could be a 2-person team, a 3-person team, or a 4-person team, depending on, really, allocation kind of drives that. The other thing that happened, we have reading in the content area. So most schools call it RICA, some call it RICA, tomato. And so reading in the content area is an opportunity for flexible grouping. And so today when we have some conversations, I know here at Yorktown I hear a lot of conversation about flexible grouping being during that reading in the content area. That's not necessarily the only place where that can occur. And then what we did to support that, the first year we had the National Middle School Association. We do an all middle school conference for all the middle schools in Columbus. So at this point in time, we have 35 schools that service middle school students. So I think we have about 22 traditional middle schools. 35 they're either a K6, a 6-8, a 1-8, a 7-12. There's all kinds of configurations. So you'll see that, but we offer a conference that allows anyone who's teaching middle school students to attend. So we just finished our 3rd year, and something that's very exciting that came out of that is the executive director. They are currently planning their conference, so they have their conference this year. So for the conference of 2015, they are looking to have it here in Columbus and have Columbus City Schools be the feature school. So we're under new leadership, so now I'm kind of working with them to be able to sit down with Dr. Good and to go ahead and sign off on that commitment. So what is very exciting for us is not only would that conference be here in Columbus, but usually that first day that you go to the conference, there's an opportunity for you to get on buses and to go out and see the great things that are going on in the middle schools. And so we had a keynote speaker last year at the conference who was excellent, but he had been the former executive director for the AMLE, back then NMSA, and when they were deciding which schools, they were like, why would we not ask Columbus to do that? They are doing the exact model. They learned a lot about what is good instruction for young adolescents. They applied it, they carried it on, and moved on. So that's something that's kind of exciting. Moving on to the next piece I have in front of you is an OTES rubric. And I also gave everybody an orange folder because I'm one of those people that would leave PDs and you have all kinds of bits and pieces everywhere. So it's nice that everything you collect could go into this folder. OTES rubric is what teachers are being evaluated on this school year. And some people went through the pilot last year, some just a little bit of the pilot. This year it's full implementation. So if we're talking about flexible grouping, again, I'm a fan of working smarter, not harder. We want to look at what does the rubric specifically look for in good instruction that aligns to this OTES rubric, because if we're talking about flexible grouping in our classrooms, we want to make sure that it's intentional to also help guide and support us there. So if you don't mind, find the section on differentiation. And in front of you, I think I put one pack of Post-it notes on your table. Take some Post-it notes, and what you're going to do is as you look through the indicators for differentiation, and you know that our conversation is on flexible grouping, what we are going to do is we are actually going to use this rubric for us to come up with a common definition of flexible grouping. Because I can tell you the one thing I do know, going from site to site to site, everybody defines flexible grouping a little bit differently. And so if we're working smarter, not harder, we want to use this rubric to help guide us into making a definition that we can all understand. So you're going to first start with differentiation. You're going to read through the different indicators, and you're going to take a Post-it note and for each idea of what flexible grouping could be and how does it link to your rubric. So you might have 4 Post-it notes in front of you. Start with differentiation and then look through the rest of the rubric, but differentiation is where it's really grounded.
You know, you guys should go, a couple of you guys should go.
I'm sorry, let me clarify. You're working on this independently first.
Oh.
You are going through your rubric, you're reading differentiation, and independently you're pulling off some Post-it notes and you're writing down any connection to what you think how that would relate to flexible grouping. If you finish differentiation, move on and kind of glance through the rest of the rubric, pick a category that you think would link to it, and same thing, start jotting down little ideas or concepts of what the look-fors would be when an administrator is doing your observation.
So flexible grouping, think of the words, flexible grouping.
Differentiation
I mean,
is the
again,
actual indicator.
it's that simple and yet it's got a lot of pieces to it. Right. You guys, flexible grouping, just think of the words, that your groupings are constantly changing. So it's not so you're not in the same group for every class all the time.
We're going to define flexible grouping because it's funny. It actually has about 12 different meanings.
I know. I said to them, just think of what the words mean, because they're like, I don't know what this means, but I'm like.
You're in the same boat. Actually, many teachers, this is the first time that they've seen it this year. So we're all kind of going through the same process.
See, this is how everyone's on the same page. This is how much people don't
Education
know.
changes
That's
yearly.
Right.
You're truly a lifelong learner, whether you want to be or not.
Okay.
In about 30 seconds, I'm going to stop you, and we're going to do a check-in to see if everybody is kind of on the right path. I'm going to pause you for just a second. What we're going to do is we're going to share some ideas, and then you're going to go back to individual work. So when you look through a rubric, is there anybody who wants to share one thing that they wrote on one of their Post-it notes? And don't all raise your hand at the same time.
Variety of strategies, materials, and pacing.
Okay, so let's talk about that, what she put on there. Was that one thing? Is that a lot of great ideas? Absolutely. So I will say one of the things that you'll notice with flexible grouping, it can become very overwhelming. And so when you go through this rubric and you're picking phrases, in fact, did you reread what you wrote?
Variety of strategies.
Okay, I'll stop you right there. So variety of strategies. So if you are doing flexible grouping, you may just be focused on a variety of strategies. That may be just one piece. Then the next one would be
Materials.
So using a variety of materials or having a variety of materials optional for students to use. And then your third one?
Pacing.
Well, let's talk about pacing. What does pacing mean?
Speed.
Speed, how you chunk your lesson, how long your warm-up is, do you do individual think time, do you allow for group conversation? Again, if you are very intentional, a lot of lesson plans, I will say in Columbus, because of our contract, we do have flexibility in what our lesson planning looks like. And because of that, the way my lesson plan might look will be totally different. And when you see a lot of lesson plans, what people do is focus on the what, not the how. I'm not saying that's 100% true, but a generality is the what people are teaching, not the how. So if you are really focused on flexible grouping, you may specifically just be worried about the pacing of your lesson, to be intentional that you are reaching all of your students. So, although those were all great ideas, if you tackled materials, pacing, and I forget what the other one. Strategies. If you tried to do all of those at one time, what would you look like at the end of the day?
Frazzled.
You're like frazzled and crazy. So one of the things today when we talk about flexible grouping is we're going to define what it means, but we're going to also help each person pick, this is really the avenue I want to go on. And maybe then I would lead to this, okay? So thank you for sharing your Post-it note. Is there somebody else who would like to share? And don't all raise your hand.
Okay, I went that you're looking at independent, collaborative, whole class. Because we have those different elements.
Okay.
Working within the classroom.
Great. So I would categorize all of that kind of as a grouping. So when you're doing your lesson planning for flexible grouping, you're thinking about when is it appropriate to do whole group? When is it appropriate to do some pairing? When is it appropriate to, what was the third one?
Oh, independent.
Independent work. Okay, so thinking about that. So what I'm going to do is give you about another 2 minutes to process. So you're on your Post-it notes, you're putting one concept on each Post-it note by looking through the rubric. Okay, so did this little sharing piece kind of help refine? If you messed up or you didn't like your Post-it note, that's fine. Grab more Post-it notes. I'm just going to give you about 2 more minutes. No. If I say something crazy, don't worry about it. You're good. You have about 30 seconds left to kind of finish up with your Post-it notes. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break you guys into 2 groups. And what you're going to do is you're going to take all the big ideas that you put on your Post-it note, which came straight from the OTES rubric. So as your administrators are coming into classrooms, and I just want to be clear, especially for our future teachers, is that what happens, this rubric is used, and it is, there's 3 observations for a summative score. So an administrator and evaluator would be coming in multiple times to collect this evidence. So if I came into your classroom today and you weren't using all of the types of things that are listed under an accomplished teacher, it didn't mean that you would score low. They have 3 to 4 observations to collect that data to give you a score at the end of the year. So does that make sense, just in case? Because I do know when I worked under a program like this, people became very overwhelmed thinking I have to do all of this all of the time to be considered an accomplished teacher. And just as a little bit of background is the evaluation system that we're currently coming out of in Columbus basically was S's and U's. And I know when I was in the classroom, the feedback that I got was like, great, you're doing a nice job. And they had only been in my room 2 or 3 times. So we're moving from a system where you either had S's or U's to now you're being defined as a proficient teacher, an accomplished teacher. And I believe the word proficient was just changed in law, and I forget the new name. I was trying to look it up today and I couldn't find it. But I believe proficient has been changed to like successful or something like that. And then the other 2 categories is developing or ineffective. So before, you were either satisfactory or unsatisfactory, and to now be considered an ineffective teacher, that's like a punch in the stomach. Or even to be in a 2 area, you were pretty much S's across the board. It was rare that people would have maybe 1 U, if that. But in order to give a U in the past, they had to have a lot of documentation. So what we are doing in a lot of our professional development is being very strategic and making sure that our teachers understand what they are being graded on so that they can feel successful about what they're doing. So again, it's a cumulative set of observations for a final score, not a today, on this day, you're proficient or accomplished or ineffective or developing, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to divide into 2 groups. And so what I think we're going to do is this table of 3 will be paired with these teachers right here, and then you guys kind of be one collective group. What you're going to do, this group over here is going to use that table sort of as your graphic organizer, and this group can use this board. What you're going to do is you're going to go through your Post-it notes and try to put them in categories. So if we list all of these different things, again, it becomes very overwhelming. But start sharing your Post-it notes and start grouping them into different categories. All right? So this group is up here on this board, and this group is back here on the table.
Help yourself, guys. Bagels and cream cheese and Nutri-Grain bars. Eat them. As long as I come and you guys take care of us, I'll feed you. That's my job.
All right, so let's,
Mine would start.
so materials, grouping, strategies, and pacing.
No, I won't. You know, I have these 5 students who have to miss this presentation.
With them. So that would be a sense of collaborative instruction. Or I could do whole group. And with whole class, that means that we are working, obviously, all as one while we're working on figuring out what our weaknesses are. So those were just different styles of instruction that we could use maybe as one. What else?